All right, here we go, everybody. It's another show of the Mind Body Marathon, and on today's show we have Forrest Webb, otherwise known as ForrestGetemGump,
Yep.
is what he goes by now. And this will be a really fun show. I've known Forrest for a couple years, and he was a former professional breakdancer, and now he's a health nut and a runner and DJ, and just kind of like a Renaissance man altogether. So we're gonna have a fun conversation with him. So thanks for joining us on the show, Forrest.
Oh, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So the biggest thing for you recently is what's your biggest achievement recently? What happened?
I was inducted into the Breakin Hall of Fame in New York City, which is going to be part of the Hip Hop Museum when it opens in the Bronx next year. So
Okay.
all the inductees will be featured in a museum. So I was honored with a citation from the first generation breakers and New York City's a proclamation from the first generation breakers and a citation from New York City and one from New York State.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it was cool.
So it's like official thing. It's like the New York State like inducts you and everything.
Yep, it's right there on the certificate when you get it. Breakin Hall of Fame.
I love that. So what years were you active with Breakin?
Started in 1982.
The year I was born, by the way.
That's the year I started. And
How old were you then?
12 years old.
Nice.
And so I want to say I never completely fell out of it, but there was kind of a dark period. 82 to 86, Breakin was everywhere. You could see it on every major network, TV, movies. Then it kind of died down. And then in the early 90s, it started to come up from the ashes again. So I was kind of active in helping bring the scene back in New York. There were already people out there doing it, but I kind of jumped in. And there was only like a handful of people in New York, maybe 2 handfuls of people in New York that were breaking at the time. But we were determined to bring it back. And so we went from there to the Olympics.
I know, right? I know that's I know I was texting you like crazy throughout the Olympics, and obviously whenever I talk to people now about the Olympics, they're like, "Oh man, did you see Breakin?" And then everybody goes to the Australian girl. It's like, "Did you see her?"
Yeah.
It's like I feel bad for that girl because she was roasted pretty bad.
Yeah, and it's bad for Australia because I spent a lot of time down there, and they actually have a really good breaking scene, at least where I was in Adelaide and Melbourne. And then I know about the breakers in Sydney, and I think some of the breakers from Sydney moved to Melbourne. There's a group called Rapid Fire down there, but yeah, they had a great scene when I was down there in the early 2000s.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So let's kind of take a step back in time. When did breaking really start kind of as a formal thing?
Okay, so from my research, it was around in the 70s, but it was only really limited to New York City. And I think the breaking point, I think in 81, I think it was 2020, they came out with a feature on hip hop, but I think what really catapulted it was when the Rocksteady Crew, which I'm a former member of, did the scene in Flashdance. It was for the commercial side of it. It was between Rocksteady and New York City Breakers that really pushed it into the mainstream media.
And were they like different? They were just different, like essentially gangs and breakers.
Well, Rocksteady Crew, they're both Bronx, both crews from the Bronx. And they were the first to really kind of get the exposure. But speaking for New York City, it was still all over the city. There were different styles of different neighborhoods, different terminologies for different moves. So, you might have a guy in Brooklyn do what they call a sleeper, which in the Bronx would be called a baby freeze, or vice versa.
So where did you grow up in New York?
Well, so this is kind of a a zigzag story. My mother was a college professor at Delhi Tech in Delhi, New York, which is outside the city. And that's kind of where I got started. Then I lived in Liverpool, New York, and then Harlem.
So what would you say was your peak breaking years?
Oh man. It's kind of hard to say because when I look at myself as a youth, I was way more crazier. Like I was very daring, trying different things. And then as I got older in my 20s, I was still had that youth and agility, but I was a little more careful.
Yeah.
Like when I was in high school, I never cared about getting hurt. I would get hurt and still dance. But then my 20s, I think I got better at moves and I understood the dance better than I did in the 80s. But I think in the 80s, I was still doing things that were, I guess, considered advanced.
Yeah.
But then some of those moves that I was doing in the 80s, I never did in the 90s.
So you sort of evolved and, you're a little bit more exploratory when you were younger, but then when you got older, you're a bit more based on perfection and just kind of solidifying some moves.
Just kind of went like that. Like some moves from the 80s I didn't want to do anymore and forgot. Like
what would be a move? Like what was one of the ones you kind of lopped off your routine?
So even though they don't consider it breaking, in the 80s, I got really good at doing a Thomas Flare and combinations out of the Thomas Flare, which was a gymnastics move, but I would combine it with breaking. And I think in the 80s, I could do like 18, 20 flares. But in the 90s, I cut it down because the more I practiced it, the more my wrists would start hurting. I didn't strengthen my wrists. So like the shift of weight and continuously doing it. So I may have cut it down from 20 to 3, sometimes 4.
Yeah.
Then 1. Now I don't do it at all.
Well, speaking of that, we were just talking about this. So when I first met you, which was probably about a decade ago, I would imagine.
Yep.
Which is pretty crazy to think about. I had just kind of stopped running, and Zach was working with us. Dr. Matt was working at the clinic, and we were like kind of bored essentially with what we were doing. We were rock climbing a bunch and biking a bunch, but we were sort of bored because neither of us were running all that much. And we're like, all right, well, we met Forrest, and so let's have him teach us breakdancing.
Yeah.
So he came to the clinic and taught us breakdancing. I can remember it was 1 or 2 times, but we did it a good old college try for a couple hours, and I could not believe how hard it is on your hands and wrist. And that by far was the most staggering, difficult portion. The rhythm side of it, you can't even get to that point until you can get the proper like placement of your hands. And like you were just saying, like it really takes a crazy amount of strength to get your hands and fingers really just to be able to bend the way they need to on the ground placement.
Yeah, I guess I never thought of that until later because I just grew up doing it. So maybe my hands were a little more agile. I mean, I definitely am callous.
Yeah.
Beyond belief, but it does take a little bit of getting used to. And like I was saying, some people break flat-handed and some people break, on their 4 fingers and thumb, which there's a big difference in the way your breaking is going to look if you break flat-handed versus that. Like when you're up on your 4 fingers and thumb, it'll look a little cleaner. And then when you're flat-handed, it looks more sloppy, just that little inch of a difference.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, it's like, in running, we talk a lot about even like hand placement. If you read my book, like thumb placement can change the angle of your elbow and shoulder, which messes with your neck placement. The way you specifically move your toes when you're contacting the ground will obviously affect your form. All that sort of stuff matters. And it's amazing that just even like a couple centimeters difference in terms of where you place your thumb will make a move look completely different, despite it being an absolute wild looking move. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think I did the opposite. I wasn't bored with breaking, but I had just I was in a dance company, and I had my own dance company, and then a few bad business transactions, and I'm just like, I'm done with all of this. And then I ended up finding running.
Yeah. So tell us about that transition, which is how I met you, essentially.
Yep. So moved to Ohio. Unfortunate circumstances with my mother passing. So we moved here, and I was really just mad at the time because I came out of a really successful dance company, and we toured all over the world. And then I decided to go out on my own, but then I partnered up with somebody that they weren't doing the right things with the money or the company. I eventually just said, forget it. Because we worked hard to get to where we're at, and then you realize, oh man, this guy's lifting, taking money off the top. And
Yeah.
I just got kind of fed up with the whole entertainment thing. And I didn't call it quits, but I just kind of fell back, and I wanted to do something, stay physical. And then I wasn't doing anything. And then I came out of the grocery store one day, and my wife didn't recognize me because I had picked up so much weight. And I was like, man, I got to do something. So
what were you up to? What was the highest you got?
I think it was about 260 pounds.
What are you rolling at right now?
About 185.
That's amazing.
And when I was breaking at my peak, I was 165, 170. In my teenage years, 155.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you hit 260, and you're like, all right, let's start running or doing something.
Yep. So I just I bought a generic plan and just figured out, I didn't know what tempo runs were. I didn't know what Bartlett runs were. I didn't, know what intervals were.
Yeah.
So I bought some books and purchased a plan and just figured it out. Bought my first Garmin watch. I think it was a 610. It was it was a long time ago.
What were you training? What did you train for?
First marathon I did was Akron. First race I did was 8K. I did the whole series my first year running.
What year was that?
It might have been 2014 or 15.
Man, that was right. Yeah, exactly.
That's right, when I met you, because I met you at the expo.
That's amazing. Huh.
And
well, you did a good job because you were not that big then. So you lost weight pretty quick then.
Yeah. I dropped it. I think at that time I was just going through some stuff because my mother had passed. And, I was just kind of mad at the world then.
Yeah.
So I wasn't doing anything. I was just eating, and because it was
just being human, man.
Her death was sudden, and I didn't really take it too well. You couldn't tell on the outside, but yeah, it was just eating me up inside.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I ended up picking up weight, and then my wife said, I didn't recognize you coming out of the store. And I'm like, wow, I'm look that bad.
It's amazing how just a moment like that, just a normal interaction, just a drive-by comment can totally change your mindset on something. Yeah. It's just something like just slaps you in the face. It's just a perfect time.
Yep. That's what happened. And then I started running, and I didn't stop.
It helps to, going back to the coping thing too. It's like, I hear so many times from patients, if they're injured and they're like, you don't understand, like, I need to run. Like, life is crazy. Work is nuts. Like, I will blow a gasket if I do not run.
Yep.
And I'll have like other family members thank me if I get people better and they can start running, because they're like, she's so much better. She's so much more exciting and happy, or he's so much better at home. It's like, it's amazing how when everything's firing on all cylinders from an active perspective, then, you're a better husband or better wife, better spouse, better everything. So works all together.
What I like about running is, you can do it very regimented. You can do it by yourself. You can run with a group. When, you can race with a group. You can run solo. Like when you're breaking, you practice on your own or practice with a group, but then when you're breaking it, it's always attention on you.
Yeah.
Yep. And everybody's like trying to see if you mess up or how good this move is. And breaking's very, very competitive. Like, I've seen people that get crushed in battles that never come back to dance just because of the humiliation. Like, it's just weird. Like, when you get, I think now it's a little better, but like if you get smoked really bad, like that just is talked about throughout history.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, oh yeah, you got smoked. If you lose a race running, nobody cares.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you're not in it. I mean, some people are in it to win, but
well, it is different because running is not mano a mano. Running is, the competition is attenuated over the full course of the field.
Yep.
Whereas breaking, it's like a boxing match. It's very clear who the winner and loser is. And in those settings, it is in the game theory side of it, it is a little bit more jarring, because there's, and essentially in game theory, it's like when you have a winner and a loser in, where there's two competitors, it's like, it's quite a bit more obvious versus running.
Yeah. Like I always tell everybody, when I started breaking, I didn't really understand it in full. And so like when you go back to the Hall of Fame, I had my friend introduce me that we met in high school, and he told me that his name's Everett. He told me that you're good at what you do, but I can beat you breaking because you don't have no footwork and no style. And I didn't understand what he meant. And I ended up at the skating rink one Saturday, and I battled this guy named Ray Newkirk. And Ray, at that time, I was a one-dimensional breaker. Like I would do one move and be done, do another move and be done. And Ray kind of showed me when we battled how to combinate everything.
Yeah.
He was just going in and out of stuff with ease, and like he was a pro at it. And so that Monday I go to school and everybody's talking about how I got smoked at the skating rink Saturday. And I just wanted to crawl up under a rock. But what I did was I'm like, okay, I started writing my moves down in different combinations, and I practiced and practiced and practiced. And then I said, I'm going to go back and battle that guy again. But then by the time I was ready to battle, Ray had just moved on to something else. He's like one of these guys that whatever he picks up and does, he's like naturally good.
Yeah.
Like he's an MMA guy now. And, they say as jiu-jitsu, he's phenomenal. He was John Jones' first coach.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
He's out of Rochester?
He's in Syracuse.
Syracuse. Yeah.
And yeah, he's one of those guys, man. He just he was good at BMX. Like he was kind of a trailblazer in everything.
Yeah.
So even with the BMX, like, some of the top guys in the world would learn tricks from him.
Just a creative mind and just a good athlete.
Yeah.
It's funny too, because like I for some reason I have an obsession with Bruce Lee, and I read a lot of content on him and some of his works and stuff. And one of the things that I always hear and read about with him is that he would annoy so many people because he could basically do whatever he wanted. Mm-hmm. So like he would, like, for instance, there's this one story where he was dating this famous dancer, and she was trying to learn this combination, and he was just kind of like watching her in the background, and then he's like, no, this is how you do it. And then he shows her the moves. And it's like he just was better. He just was so good with his body and moving, with the awareness and moving his body in space that he could just instantly figure things out. Some people just have that gift.
Yeah, some people just have it. Like, all sports, like basketball, LeBron James just has it. Michael Jordan just has it. Dr. J just had it.
Yeah.
And Ray was one of those guys. He just had it. He was, where I was at, he was years above everybody else in breaking, and he didn't even stay in it that long.
Yeah.
But he's just one of those guys, man. Just one of those phenom type of guys.
Is there any crossover between the two in your mind? when you started to apply yourself in running and training for races and, starting to pick up on the sport, was there anything that you took from breaking over to running?
Yeah, and vice versa. But what I realized when I started running is that um, people just practice wrong. So breaking, you're pushing yourself hard every single day, um, and you're not really fully recovering. Uh, and so I think at some point you end up plateauing because you're not resting
Yeah.
and getting better. Where I took from running is like every day doesn't have to be hard. And I kind of adopted the 80-20 rule. So I was like, well, maybe if I, you know, just break and not go all out, maybe just practice moves, not full out, I'll get them better, than have days where I go full out, like maybe go, I remember when I was in high school, every weekend, I used to basically, I don't know, I wasn't tearing my inner thigh, but I would be sore.
Hmm.
And then I couldn't break for the rest of the week till next Saturday.
Yeah.
Like if I went out Saturday night, went really hard, but then I would try to break, and I'm realizing that, wow, I'm really screwing myself up because I'm not going to be ready because at that time we went out, there weren't contests like that. Like all the battles took place in the clubs.
Yeah.
So you had to be ready for next Saturday. And so you had to practice all week. So basically you were like forced to come with something different every Saturday. So you would practice all week, try to get something together for the next Saturday, but then, you're blowing yourself out on the Saturday and then you can't get the next Saturday because you're sore and you're practicing every day.
Yeah.
And I think at that time I was scared to take a day off.
Yeah. I can see that.
Because I'm thinking like, well, if I got to battle this guy, he's going to do this and that. And so I was scared to, whereas running, I'm happy for the light days.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great concept, even for running. Really, it's just that you have to have I always say you have to have your valleys to have your peaks, and you're exactly right. If you're pushing, you will absolutely plateau. Your nervous system can only handle so much adaptation,
Yeah.
and I'm sure somebody who's like training professionally now for breaking, I'm sure they have figured that out, and they're oscillating their training cycles a bit more, where they have hard days, they have easy days where they're just kind of doing routine moves and perfecting like routine moves, and they have hard days where they're challenging unique moves.
Yeah.
That sort of seems like a natural sequence, for training and breaking.
Yeah. And I remember, I'll never forget. So I used to get off of work in the morning and I'd take the subway down to Lower East Side to Smith Projects, and I would practice in there every morning, me and Ken Swift. But I remember one time this guy from DC had came up and we were practicing, and he wanted to practice like every other day. I'm like, dude, you got to be on this every day. And I didn't realize, like, man, he was actually right. You do need the rest. I thought he was crazy for wanting to take 2 days off in a week.
Huh.
Like, no, you're going to suck.
That's so interesting. And that's such dedication that you guys were getting after it like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
So this is a world that not a lot of us have been introduced to. Like, walk us through like a typical dance battle. Like, how do you select who goes, and like, how does that work? Is it just like off feel? Because it's interesting. I did a little bit of capoeira, and there's a feeling to the ring.
Yeah.
If anybody knows or has watched videos on capoeira, it's like this Brazilian like dance, martial arts, and you kind of dance fight, and so there's a rhythm to it, and so sometimes you'll be in a dance circle, and then you kind of feel a connection with somebody, right? And you're just like, I guess we're battling, like you just connect.
Yep.
Is that kind of how it works?
So with breaking, you have organized competition, and then you have what Ken Swift named dark circles. So organized competition is just what it is. You go in, you sign up, and they pick your name out of a hat, 2 names out of a hat, and that's who they pair up.
Okay.
And then you might battle 3 rounds, 5 rounds. Some battles will, when we do the Smoked in Ohio battle, that's in Columbus. There's usually like 100 competitors at that. They come from all over. And so they'll run everybody through 1 round. So you have 1 time to take somebody out to advance. And then as you get into the semis and the top 16, then you have more room to do 3 rounds because you have a whole time limit. And trying to get through 100 battles in 6 hours is crazy. So you have to do 1 round.
So how long does the battles typically last?
It depends on how many rounds they have. Like I would say like most runs are 30 to 45 seconds per dancer. And so depending on how many rounds, it could be anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes per battle. And then the dark circles is of course where you might we'll just be all dancing together. You might not even know some dancers, but you'll just call somebody out. You'll do something, land a move in their face, and then they'll like take it, oh, he's trying to battle me.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times with those, there's no time limit. That's kind of what I grew up on was battling like that. And then I'd say the organized competitions were more of a thing in the 90s. I mean, they had organized competition in the 80s, but I think it became more of a thing in the 90s, especially when they started doing events like the Pro-Am down in Miami and freestyle session. And then in New York, you had breakbeats in the Bronx, and that was kind of like a hybrid thing where there was a portion for organized battling, but then they had circles and people just dancing the rest of the party. But I'd say Pro-Am and in Miami and freestyle session in California kind of, then you had Battle of the Year in Germany because the whole European scene was a different thing. So in Germany, you had Battle of the Year, and the way Thomas, who's the founder that he organized it originally, was he had group showcase, and then the top showcases got selected to battle at the end. So he wanted to show a performance and stage and theater side of breaking, but then show the organized competition. But Battle of the Year was like the longest running competition, and that started in I want to say late 80s, early 90s. I don't know the year specifically, and then those tapes circulated around, and even in New York, that helped energize the scene. There were still people in New York breaking though, so
yeah.
A lot of people want to give the Europeans credit for bringing breaking back, but in my mind, that's a false narrative because if you still have people in New York breaking, even when you had groups like the Float Committee and Breeze Team who were street performers, they were still representing the dance. So, yeah, it's.
So now we kind of drove by the Olympics earlier. You had an issue with kind of how that was run and scored, and can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
So originally, I don't know the full details, but originally I think it was, so I have to break this down, right? I think there was USA Dance, which was recognized by WDSF, World Dance Sports Federation. So WDSF, I think, was recognized by the Olympics, and then USA Dance came under that, which is a ballroom dance organization. So I'm not sure what happened there, but I guess there was some kind of disagreement. Then USA Breakin started, which I was a part of. So that was a committee. So you had 3 organizations trying to compete for the national governing body. So I was with USA Breakin. We had all of the top dogs on USA Breakin. And then there was another group, Child of the Culture. So everybody put in their application. I was on the Legacy Oversight Committee. So we were just like an extra pair of eyes. We were trying to come up with the rules, regulations. This was just for the USA.
Correct.
And so when everybody applied, the IOC wrote back and said that they weren't going to issue a governing body, a NG, national governing body status until proven organizations show they can work together, which I don't know what was meant by that, and they said they were going to stay in charge of the Olympics. And so WDSF, they became the shot callers. So to be a judge, you had to go through their training. Basically anything had to go through them. And my issue was, hey, skateboarding had to show their independence. Breaking doesn't need ballroom dance, especially for the USA, representing breaking. And so that was the whole issue with Ray Gun. Like, I guess she's rated number 1 by WDSF right now, which is crazy.
And that's who again? The
girl from Australia.
Australian, yeah.
So yeah, I think it went the wrong way. Then I think everybody wanted to wear the badge. Oh, I helped get breaking in the Olympics, or I'm the top dog. And then I eventually, so after when the IOC sent out that letter, it just kind of like people dispersed, but also people were jumping ship. They left USA Breaking and went back to USA Dance and ballroom dance. They wanted it under the name Breaking for Gold. So all of those guys were with USA Breaking, and then they jumped ship. But I also think, the money trail. People were following, who had the money. Because one thing about USA Breaking, it was all volunteer, and there was no money trail, where I think Breaking for Gold kind of had some financial backing.
No, I don't think it's in the next Olympics, correct?
Nope, it's out of LA. I guess they said the urban sports or urban arts don't kind of fit their agenda. So the next chance is, I think, 2032 in Brisbane. But I think a sport has to be in there 3 consecutive times, from what I understand, to be permanent.
Yeah. So what really ends up happening is, this brings me up to my next point, is with the Olympics. So whenever a country takes a bid to get the Olympics, they get options. So there's standardized sports, like nobody would eliminate track and field or gymnastics. That would obviously be ridiculous. But sports you think that shouldn't be eliminated, like wrestling, have been on the chopping block, actually. So it really just comes down to like popularity, right? But when a country gets a bid, they do get the option to add a new sport and take out a sport.
Yep.
And these are what they call fringe sports. And France opted to have breaking in. That was their bid in. I don't know what they took out, actually, but they opted to have breaking in. And then what he's saying is, for LA, the USOC opted to have breaking out, and they added in flag football. So that was our throw in, which actually is, I think, going to be extremely entertaining, and I think it'll be a good addition. But I didn't know, I think the overall, and this is one of the points I wanted to get to, I think the overall perception of breaking was that it wasn't quite as entertaining as we all thought it would be, which is the point you were making, whereas they were giving such high point totals to just like normal moves, and just like, so for instance, like if you watch gymnastics, obviously Simone Biles pushes the envelope and does unique, crazy moves. But the 99% of gymnastics prior to that is the same moves over and over and over, and you're just trying to perfect them. But when people think of like a unique sport like breakdancing, in breaking, they're looking for like really creative measures and super unique combinations and moves. And we weren't getting that because people were getting better scores by just perfecting a smaller range of moves. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, the thing that's interesting about it to me is that the people, other than the girl from Australia, most of the women and men, they're all top level competitors and world champions, respectively, through Red Bull, BC1, and Monster Energy. I don't necessarily agree with the judging system and what they came up with. Like there was, I think, 5 different criteria. So I think, in a way, some of the people that were training for it were trying to fit that, and I think that may have been one issue. But like Victor Montalvo, definitely a top level guy. Jeffro, top level guy. You had Hong Ten, Menno from Amsterdam. Like I think Menno just won Red Bull Beast, the last Red Bull BC1. I think it's his 3rd or 4th world championship, but I don't even think he made the top 8 bracket in the Olympics.
So that's kind of what I'm saying is like, why was that? What was because it wasn't actually reflecting who was the best.
Yeah, I just think the way they put it together.
Yeah, see, that's so sad. They just didn't get it right from the gun. It'd be like saying we obviously know, Simone Biles and Rebecca Andrade, they're the best gymnastics.
Yeah.
Gymnasts in the world. And then somehow you like organize the scoring system that discourages their key moves. It's like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and then the other issue with breaking, where you have to draw the line between sport and dance. I never really looked at it as a sport. I always looked at it as a dance. And then as far as creativity, how do you really judge that?
I know, right?
Because somebody can do something that I've never seen before. So where somebody else may have seen this person do it 10 times, so it's not original to them, where maybe it's my first time seeing it and I'm a judge. I'm like,
so that is a good point, and that's kind of why I'm kind of harping on this a little bit. So how do they do that at some of the key competitions now, like Red Bull 1 and all that? Like, how do they do that?
Yeah, I guess I don't think they have what they call, I think, a trivium system. I don't know that much about it, but I think you get some judges who kind of know the foundation of breaking and kind of understand like a unique move, and maybe that's how they judge it.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to say because I know there's the phone. I think
it's over there.
Yeah, it's really hard to say. Like even at some of the other battles, like BC1 and in those Monster Energy battles and other battles, I don't agree with some of the calls on those 100%.
Yeah,
but I definitely didn't agree with some of the breaking in the Olympics, because I'll tell you one battle I thought when we were trying to get the U.S. into the top 8 bracket, I think Jeffro had beat Danny, I think it was Danny from France. I thought Jeffro did just enough to edge him out of that battle. But when they put the score up, I was like, what?
Well, this is kind of the other thing too. Like back in your day when you were having dance battles and things like that in a club, you kind of know who wins, right? You kind of,
yeah.
Right. There's a feeling to it. There's a symbiotic connection to what's happening on the floor, and sometimes that is lost when it's all standardized.
Yep.
You kind of get the sense like, who it really is the top dog here.
Yeah, like in the club, it's like, but then I got the whole ego thing in the club too. Oh yeah, you smoked that guy. No, I smoked you. Like I saw a battle one time where both the guys battling, they were just, you could tell right off the bat there was just no love for each other. They did not like each other. And then they battled, I think, 3 or 4 rounds, and then they both still told each other they sucked and they smoked each other. So then at that point, it's just like, okay, it's just somebody's opinion now.
Yeah.
You know, you're not making an actual call where, yeah, there's been battles. You know, there were a few battles in the Olympics that I just said, no way, that's crazy.
So what are you training for now with running?
I'm gonna try to get into Boston. So my goal is to do the 6 world majors.
Oh yeah, well it's 7 now.
Yeah, it's 7 because I think they was it Australia they added
Sydney
in?
for next year. Yeah, 2025 is Sydney.
I thought they were gonna hold off. So I guess I got to do 7 now.
Well, actually, hold that thought too, because it's going to be 9 pretty quick because Shanghai is on the list, and so is Cape Town.
Yep, I saw the Africa. Yeah.
So because they want to hit every continent, but they're not entertaining currently a race in South America, which is weird. But then again, it is kind of hard to run marathons in South America.
Well, I guess I have to try to finish all that up before it expands to 9. But if it goes to 9, I guess that's the longer I'll have to run.
Exactly.
So I'm going to do those marathons, and then I'm going to retire from marathoning, and I'm just going to do shorter distance races, 5Ks, 10Ks.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, another, I've only run 2 majors. I've run Chicago and New York. Sorry, Chicago and Boston. And I've been wanting to do New York pretty much every year, which I'm sure for you will be a phenomenal race.
I ran that already.
Oh, you've done New York. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
Yeah. When did you do it?
2021, I think.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I did. And I did Chicago. I did New York and Chicago back to back. So I did the Chicago race in October, and then I ran the New York race in November.
How close are you getting into Boston?
I don't know yet. I took some time off with all this, with the whole breaking thing and with the DJ traveling and all of that. So I'm going to kind of just start back slow.
Yeah.
And then just build up. And then maybe by next year, take a shot at Boston.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I know like some of the other races are oddly enough even harder to get into, like London and Berlin and Tokyo.
I got into Berlin.
Good for you.
Just COVID messed that all up.
Oh.
So they deferred me till the next year, but then, man, for me and my wife to go, it would have been like a $10,000 trip.
Jeez.
Yeah, the tickets were almost up to $3,000. Well, they were over $3,000.
Yeah, that's
a piece.
Unacceptable.
So, yeah, we were.
I know. I just went over to Valencia, and it was only like $600 to get over to Valencia in Madrid. So it's much cheaper now. It's not that anymore.
Yeah, so I think I'm definitely gonna try to get back into Berlin and Boston, and then I'll try to. My friend gave me a strategy to get on into the last 2 because she told me that Tokyo and London were the hardest to get into.
Yeah.
So especially London for U.S. citizens.
Oh yeah, it's very difficult.
So I don't know what I have to do. I guess I just have to research it. But she told me this is how you do it, but I just forgot.
Yeah. No, there's ways in. We could chat more about that. But yeah, so I asked you earlier what you ate for breakfast when we were doing a sound check, and what'd you say?
Nothing.
So walk me through some of your kind of lifestyle, eating habits, kind of what you're into these days, because you're kind of a health nut like I am.
I do 2 meals a day, sometimes 1, and sometimes I fast. So I'll do maybe 3 days a week. I'll do 2 days a meal. 2 meals a day. I'll do a salad for lunch, and then I'll make some kind of stew or something for dinner. And then Wednesday to Friday, I'll just do 1 meal a day.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll go weeks doing 1 meal a day.
And why do you do that? What do you feel good? What do you feel with it? So basically it's intermittent fasting.
Yeah. Which I never called it that. I've done that for so many years. I used to just fast all the time. Even when I was dancing, I'd go 2 or 3 days without eating or eat once.
Why was that?
I don't know. I think the difference now is I do it low carb. I think back then I just ate whatever I wanted. I'd eat, 1 time a day.
But why did you have that intuition to do that even back then?
I don't even know.
I don't know. I find that interesting because a lot of people, even when I'm not running, I don't really gain weight. And I think it's because when I was a child, I literally, and all through high school, I literally didn't eat that much. Like I just, it was, it's not that I was like never hungry or anything. It just, I don't know, like it just wasn't a thing I was into. Like I just,
Yeah.
I don't really know how else to explain it.
I think for me, just the hustle and bustle of
Yeah.
living in New York, you could just go to a deli and grab something, but I was just always moving. I didn't think about eating until I was actually really hungry. So, like when I worked at the record shop in New York, I ate at one place. It was Cafe 7A, and I would order the same thing every day.
So
right now, I kind of eat the same thing every day. I mean,
yeah, you're talking about this stew. What kind of stew you into?
so I just put a couple spices in it, one cruciferous vegetable, and then protein with coconut milk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're kind of like a paleo, low carb kind of a situation.
Right now, yeah.
Yeah.
But I have been high carb, and when I was high carb, I was high in weight too.
Yeah. Yeah. I know we're kind of the same on that. It just feels more natural. Like anytime I have more carbs, like it slows me down. I'm not as
Yeah.
sharp, and then not that I hate carbs or anything. It's just, I don't feel good if I have a ton of them.
Yeah. And then I guess a lot of it's preserving the youth. I don't want to eat so much because, honestly, I have friends that they stopped breaking years ago, and man, they ballooned up.
Yeah.
And then they can't dance anymore. And I always want to be able to at least do something.
Yeah. And what you do, I've seen you at clubs. You just pop out and do some moves.
Yep. Just whatever. I think I used to practice very regimented, but I think as I learn to dance more, I try to be a little bit more spontaneous with it. So like I never know what I'm gonna do when I go out.
Yeah.
I have friends that just make up moves like right on the spot, and they might not ever do it again.
Yeah.
I think you get to a stage where you practice so many times you can contort and throw your body any which way. And I mean, I've honestly, like, I think through all the years I've been breaking, which is going on 40 years,
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
there may have been 2 times where I really felt satisfied with my dancing, maybe 3. Like, I've always been critical of how I was when I went out.
So what would you say was your greatest flow and memory with dancing?
I remember one night being at the Palladium. That was a club in New York City on 14th Street. Me and my friend were in there, and this kid tried to battle me, and I didn't know him, and everything clicked. And then my friend I was with, he was very hypercritical. Like he didn't like anybody. He didn't like give props to anyone or nothing. But that night he told me, he goes, you did your thing. Like he was actually like cheering on the side. But everything it clicked. And then another time I remember being in Finland, and we were in a nightclub, and it's just weird. I don't know if it was like out of body, but I just started doing stuff that I never did before and felt really good at it. And then my friend was even like clapping. It was just, I think at that time when I was dancing every day and I was taking risk every day. So finally, I guess when it all culminated in the club that night, everything just came out. Because when we were in Australia, we did like 53 shows in 60 days because we were only allowed 1 day off a week. And then we did matinees on I think Saturday and Sunday. We did 2 shows a night, or 2 shows, one in a day and one at night. And so when you're out there just dancing and having fun, you're also getting in shape at the same time. So I think I was maybe at some peak and just, I wasn't thinking about nothing and everything just came together.
Yeah, that's an important component. You weren't thinking about anything, you just that's what a flow state is a flow state is a non-judgmental state. it's a state where you're not happy, you're not sad, you're nothing. You're just flowing. There's no, I did bad with this, I did good with this, and I'm doing great, I'm doing bad. There's no judgment at all. You're just kind of like in tune with your body and it's just clicking. And then the moment you realize you're in it, you're out of it.
Yep. And I didn't realize that I was just having fun. Wow. And I think because you're, like I say, you're dancing every night and you're getting in great shape, and I was taking risk in shows. I was doing stuff in shows that I never did before, and it was like coming off.
Yeah.
And I remember one night the sound guy was like, "Man," he goes, "You're doing different stuff." Because everybody, when we were doing the show, like you pretty much knew what everybody was going to do, like what their solo was. But I couldn't be happy doing the same thing every night.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was just trying different stuff and it came off every time.
I know, like even when I'm running marathons now, going back to Valencia a month ago, and I'm in a good flow state, I'm cruising, I'm feeling in control, and then I'm thinking, oh wait, I'm doing really good, or I'm I'm locked in. The minute you think that, you have to be like, all right, calm down, just clear the mind again, just try to get back set, because anytime you're coming to those awareness components, they're going to pull you out of that flow state. And you as an entertainer know that really well.
My friend in New York, she told me, she said the best races she's run and the PR she said is when she wasn't looking at her watch.
Yeah, I just did a post yesterday about that. My Throwback Thursday post where I show a race from 2010, a cross country race, and then you can clearly see my watch tan line where I don't have a watch on. And it's like, that was probably the most fun in a cross country race I've had that day, but I never, anything under a half marathon, I legitimately don't wear a watch. And because I could do the math in my head on it, splits and stuff. But over a half marathon, I just basically just keep a loose eye on it. And like when I ran Valencia, so that's 42.2K. Yep. So it was a marathon. I looked at my watch 8 times because I looked at it every 5K.
Wow.
So that's it. It's like in a marathon, you look at your watch 8 times just to get a split.
Wow.
But I don't know. I agree with that. You're right. You want to be, I feel like modern technology is great and all, but man, does it pull you away.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I mean, that's for everything. Even with breaking with the DJs, the technology is great, but a lot of stuff that we used to break to, the music is terrible now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely not the same. An evolution for sure.
Yeah.
So Forrest, how can people get a hold of some of your work? Because you put out content now.
Yep, I'm doing music. I'm putting out mixes. I'm on Mixcloud, DJ ForrestGetemGump, Instagram, DJ ForrestGetemGump. Those are pretty much and I'm on SoundCloud too as ForrestGetemGump. Instagram, I'm on Facebook, but I don't use it that much. I just have it linked to Instagram. So I just mainly use Instagram and SoundCloud and Mixcloud.
Yeah, and I've subscribed to his Mixcloud because I love Mixcloud. It's got some good boiler room stuff.
Oh yeah.
And if you really want to get some good flows and good music and stuff that's not mainstream and people are pushing the envelope and being creative, and Mixcloud is a great way to do it, because a lot of them are like shows essentially, or like what would you call it? Like basically a mixtape, right?
Yep, mixtape, or some people will, if they do like terrestrial radio or live radio, they'll record it and put it on Mixcloud so you can recatch the show. I actually gained a lot of traction on Mixcloud because when I first started, nobody was listening, but then within like a year, everything I would put out was starting to get into the global charts.
Well, and you're doing great with that. I first found out about Mixcloud maybe like 6-7 years ago because my wife and I would love to go dancing a lot, and then we we always listen to the Pitbull Globalization station on Sirius XM.
Yeah.
And then one of the guys, he puts together this really cool, like old school dance mix thing. And then I found him on Mixcloud. And then that's also how I found you, because I actually found you even before you told me you were on there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so anybody should check that out. So check out his work there. And do you have any of your old videos on YouTube?
Yep. There's like, I think a couple videos. I have one up, then a couple other people put them up. I actually have one with Don Campbell. So he was, for all the old school people, if they ever watched like Carol Burnett, American Bandstand, What's Happening, all of those shows back from the 70s, he was the guy who taught rerun and spearheaded the whole locking movement. So I have a video with him. I did a news segment with him in Canada, him and my friend Raphael, which was like an honor, like to even do something with a guy like that.
Yeah.
Then I have, I think there's a little highlight reel from some of my shows in Australia and New Zealand. Then there's some stuff from the UK, stuff from Australia. And then there's other videos. I don't know exactly which ones, but I'm on some of the other ones too.
So who would you say, so as we're rounding third on the episode here, a couple quick shot questions here. Who would you say right now are the best breakers in the world?
Man, that's hard to say.
Like what, not even person, but more style, country kind of vibe right now?
Well, I'm going to always say the United States on that, even though, there's some viable competition in Russia and other parts of the globe. Like I know Russia was up there, Amsterdam with Minnow and all of that crew over there, the UK. But I'm always going to say the US, just because it started here and there's people walking around that are actually good that you just don't see every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And any health tips for anyone? Anything that you do on a daily basis that you feel like most people can implement and make a difference in their life?
Breath work.
Oh man, there we go. I like it.
Yeah, breath work for sure. Diet. So my good friend Jim Andrello, 7th degree black belt, he told me something a long time ago that always stuck. That as you get older, he's like, the two things you always got to have in check are nutrition and cardio.
Nice.
And so that always stuck with me.
What kind of breath work do you do?
I've done the oxygen advantage. I've done this. So that was all nasal breathing, but I also done circular breathing through the mouth. That's supposed to help. It's not the greatest breath technique or breathing, but it's supposed to help things get unstuck.
Yeah.
Yep.
Those are some good ones. I usually just go right to the Wim Hof, just straight kind of fire, just Wim Hof, just get over oxygenated.
Yeah. I've done oxygen advantage for about a year, with breath holds, and so I have the app on my phone.
Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, talking about technology, it's like there's so many benefits, and you got to just learn how to use it the right way.
When I did martial arts, I was doing the qigong also.
What form of martial arts did you practice?
I did Hungar Kung Fu, done Kempo, I've done Ron Van Cleef's Chinese Goju.
So awesome.
Yeah, I got a black belt in the Ron Van Cleef
What?
system.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh, all I did in high school was martial arts, boxing, and breaking. That's it.
Man, that is awesome. I had no idea.
I got my black belt under Hugh Ratton, who was a student of Ron Van Cleef, the Black Dragon. Are you familiar with Ron Van Cleef?
No.
Oh man, you got to look him up. The dude's amazing. He's in his 80s, and I think he just got his brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh my God.
But he's a total icon, 4-time world champion. he used to live in New York City, but I think he's in Hawaii now. So he actually is the instructor of Timac from The Last Dragon, the movie. That's his instructor.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So he to this day, he's the oldest person who ever fought in the UFC. He did lose to Hoist Gracie when UFC started, but he got in the octagon at age 53.
Oh my goodness.
Ron Van Cleef, yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to look that up. Well, Forrest, I feel like we just scratched the surface on all your knowledge of all the different activities. I mean, like I said, I didn't even know you did MMA stuff. There's a whole side you have it.
Well, I did martial arts. I kind of stay away from the MMA just because I do it mainly for self-defense.
Yeah.
I'm not like, I like the competition side of it, but I don't participate in the competition. I just believe if you got to do what you got to do it. Because, living in New York City and growing up, you got to know how to fight a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you just never know. So.
Oh man. Well, thanks so much for joining us on the show. This has been great. Yeah, I mean, you easily made the hour go by quick, and so yeah, we'll have to have you on again at some point and another time. And thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you. Thanks again.
All
Pleasure
right.
to be here.
All right. All the best, everybody. Dr. Leo here. Be sure to check out my new book, Faster Without Fail: Your Guide to Overcoming Injuries and Running Faster Than Ever. It is now available on Amazon. You could read reviews on the Amazon. You can check out what other people have said about it. But basically, if you want to revolutionize your running form and better understand how to stay injury-free within the sport, this is your guide. Feel free to reach out and let us know what you think of the book. I would love to hear your feedback. But again, please check it out on Amazon. Faster Without Fail. Appreciate it. Dr. Leo here. If you want to catch me in another setting, be sure to check out my YouTube page, Running Rehab, where you will find exercises on how to stay healthy with running, how to improve your running form, and a bunch of other tips and tricks on how to get over common injuries.